And we're live for eTourism Summit for our, this is an exciting kickoff. I'm really thrilled about this next hour conversation with some of the long-standing kind of rock stars of eTourism Summit history. So really excited for you all here. I'm actually broadcasting from Orlando, where I'm attending Connect Meetings' first post-COVID event, or in COVID event, which has been spectacular. We've had about 1,000 meeting planners and hotels and suppliers from around the country meeting with our masks on and socially distanced, and it feels a lot different. But the really interesting thing is getting back live and in person is awesome, and you can actually almost see the smiles through the masks. So it's great to be back in person. I wanted to make sure we reminded everybody that eTourism Summit will be live and in person November 9th and 10th at Universal Orlando, and would love to invite you to attend that as well. None of this happens, and other than the really hard work by Becca Smith, who helps coordinate all this, without amazing support of our sponsors. And Steve, I really want to thank you and TripAdvisor for stepping up for what I think is going to be an amazing conversation. So I'd just like to ask you to say a couple words.
Sure. It's a pleasure. Well, thanks, Will, for the intro, but really also for hosting the hybrid event with its in-person component for this one next month in Orlando. It's so critical that our industry find and demonstrate successful ways to safely reconvene conferences in the current environment. So it's great, hats off to you guys. Over the course of this crazy year, one of the few constants has been consumers' passion for travel, something we'll talk about this afternoon. Throughout, travelers have told us that despite planning differently, doing more research, heading off the beaten path and seeking the outdoors, they're spending 5 hours a week planning travel. And they're coming to TripAdvisor at 4 times the volume of the next closest non-Asian travel site. And one of the big reasons for that is trust. They consistently rank TripAdvisor as the most trusted online platform at a time when, as unfortunately we all know, it's in short supply, yet it's needed most. The other thing that they're seeking in droves is positivity and reasons for optimism. And they're finding both on TripAdvisor, thanks to travelers who continue to share the experiences that they're having, including health and safety practices that they're seeing in place, like that mask wearing you mentioned, and the stories our destination partners are presenting. Key to many of those destinations has been our new TripAdvisor Insights platform, which provides marketing intelligence and the ability to measure and differentiate the distinct impact of their efforts from the visitation that occurs otherwise. And finally, a heads up, there is a handout available for you to download on the TripAdvisor Insights platform that I mentioned. It's an incredible pleasure and honor to share the screen with Sean, Laura, and Carly. So happy to jump in whenever you'd like, Will.
Thanks again, Steve. Thanks so much, and please share our appreciation with your entire team. But stepping up to make this possible was awesome. One of the long-standing themes of eTourism Summit has been See Tomorrow, and that's been the focus for 21 years. How do we prepare our tourism marketers to start thinking ahead? So I really want to spend this hour to really focus on tomorrow. But as I go around and introduce yourself, it's been such a crazy year. I mean, and it's a year that's so many different parts. Started off January, February, rocking and rolling. Our last Connect travel event was here at Kissimmee with President Obama, and everything was up, and it was going to be an amazing year. And then ITB canceled, our industry stopped, we shut down, and pretty much everybody was down for a couple months. And then we started to see the kind of Memorial Day to Labor Day, where some destinations were opening up and starting to see some success, some real solid green shoots coming up. And then we started seeing kind of the tale of two destinations, some going well and some really struggling. We layered on top of that, some fires out west, hurricanes in the Gulf, social unrest that was really unprecedented, that really made us focus inward. And then June kind of was a little scary. We got into this new season of extending summer as far as you possibly can with outdoor dining and staying out. And if I'm going to work from home, let me work from the beach for a couple of weeks. And now we're kind of gearing into the holiday season. So what I'd love to do as we kind of go around the table is just through this craziness, kind of introduce yourself, your business, and then talk a little bit about what you've learned about people and consumers and travelers, and what you're expecting kind of for the next couple months of the year. And then we can shift gears entirely into next year. So, Sean, we were so excited to have you back at eTourism Summit live and in person, since we were going to be in Seattle. So it's great to see you virtually. But welcome back to the eTourism stage. It's been a few.
Thank you, Will. Yeah, thank you for having me. This is different. I'm just imagining that we're standing in the Kabuki Hotel in San Francisco and I'm seeing all the faces. I was looking at the presenter list. I just celebrated 10 years at Google, and I haven't seen a number of you that I know are watching right now in a while. I first spoke at eTourism in 2011 as a new muskrat to Google. Hi, Lori Jo. And yeah, I just want to say hi to probably the people within eTourism that have been so welcoming to me as an outsider to the tourism industry. I think of Scott and Allison, Justin and Jane from Denver, Andrew Atlanta, Jake especially, Lori Jo, many of you know who you are. So I guess I just want to say, I'll actually put that in the context of this year. This year has been so challenging for those of us that care about travel as an industry. We know that it isn't just the business, it's the people. And I'm thankful to see this community thriving. I know that there are people that have lost their jobs. There are people whose jobs have changed significantly because of this, in addition to the personal anguish that folks have been feeling amidst economic and health crisis. And so I just want to say hi, and I miss you all, and I'm glad that the travel industry is sticking together, because there will be a recovery and this type of best practice sharing in order to survive all of these things, the ways in which not just your personal lives change, but your function for your destination is, put in the crosshairs of this. What happens when things that shouldn't be political become political, and you're in the middle of, like, since when was traveling political? Since when was safety political? It's really challenging. And so I guess I just want to acknowledge that we're all doing the best we can, and happy to share some of what we're seeing at Google. I think I would just start by, as many things have been up and down, I have actually been surprised by the stability. We thought in March that when things shut down, that we were in for a couple weeks. I mean, everyone knows that we thought this would be shorter than it has been. I think we were expecting much bigger spikes up and down on intent to travel. We've been monitoring that on a weekly basis. And while it was we look at two different indicators right now, which is intent to book within the next 2 weeks and intent to book within the next 3 months. And those were very high in March, like 90% of people saying no to the next 2 weeks, and 80% of people saying no to the next 3 months. Those have only dropped 10 points, and they've not fluctuated very much. Right now, 70% of people feel like it is irresponsible to travel, or that it wouldn't be worth the risk. We're seeing a lot of searches for information about how to do it safely with the types of limited travel that are happening, but it hasn't actually knocked around very much. And that doesn't mean that people aren't being creative in finding the new way. Outside stat, McKinsey says that 1/3 of Americans are planning on increasing domestic drive, intercity travel using personal cars. And so people are finding a way. But yeah, it's actually been remarkably stable. People are generally hitting the pause button or a significant slowdown button. And I know that all of us relate to that. I think everybody on this call and the people that I know are watching were guilty of being travel addicts themselves personally before. And when you go cold turkey and you have to explore what that feels like, it's different, But yeah, thank you. I'm excited for this conversation.
Oh, thank you, Sean. Carly, how about you and Facebook? What have you all learned?
Yeah, well, first, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Becca. Thank you, Steve, for letting me join today. And I'm super honored and excited to be on this panel with Sean and Laura, such prestigious names in the travel industry. And thank you all. As Sean said, I think you guys all have very conflicting desires and schedules, and it is a crazy time personally and professionally. So thank you for making the time to be with us today. We're hoping to add value into your 2021 planning. Along those lines, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Carly Houlihan. I'm an account manager at Facebook. I am on the travel team. What that means is that I've been at Facebook for 3 years, serving as a strategic partner to our advertisers. I support cruises, airlines, hospitality, online travel agencies, and tourism. Especially tourism, I will say. I think my core focus in North America is tourism. So many familiar faces, and really excited to be with you guys today. I think every day I try to live and breathe the inspiration and visitation conversation, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen today. So thanks for having me. In terms of what I've learned, I don't know if it's so much what I've learned, but more so what's come through and really shined this year especially, which is that tourism and tourism boards are incredibly innovative and resilient, especially the innovation piece. I think in the travel industry, when COVID-19 first happened, the pandemic first happened, tourism readily adapted. They started to innovate. They started to think of new strategies to bring people virtually to the destinations that they cared about. As Sean said, people want to be in those destinations that we care about from their couches, from their apartments, from their houses, and you all did that for them. The second piece, again, I don't know if it's that I've learned, but what I want to communicate to you all is that tourism is crucial and the jobs that you do are crucial. I do believe that tourism is going to, and tourism boards are going to have an instrumental role in the emergence of travel. You are uplifting small, medium businesses. You are uplifting your partners. You are doing a great service to the world and to our country. So thank you. And that's what I've learned, I would say, or what I would like to reiterate to you all. In terms of 2020, obviously it's been a nuts year. Let me tell you a bit about what we're seeing on our platform. The first piece is that I think tourism advertisers are being very nimble. Flexibility is the name of the game. And that's something consistent that I've seen across the board, is that geographic reemergence has been really crucial and critical, starting domestic and local and then going international. So the spheres of reemergence, I think, is important, and adjusting targeting dependent upon that is important. The second piece that Laura brought up actually before our conversation, which I'd love to dive into, is creative and copy. What is resonating with travelers today? And I would say what's been really working in 2020 for us is not just the sell component, but how are you saying and actioning as a brand and as an industry? So our creative shop has kind of two core buckets. One is the say and the other is act. For say, we're encouraging tourism boards and travel industries and travel brands to say what their policies are on safe travel, to communicate cancellations and communicate flexibility in bookings. And for tourism, I think it's how do you travel safely? For the act piece, it's more so virtual. How are you bringing people virtually to your destination through Facebook Live, Instagram Live, through videos? In addition to how are you showing it, how are you as a brand doing social good? As I said, how are you uplifting small, medium businesses and local businesses? So that in aggregate is kind of what we're seeing and what's working. But again, I'd just like to reiterate that I'm really thankful for the work that you do, and I'm thankful to be here.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us. Laura, last year you presented live and in person for the first time. So this makes you a veteran of the hybrid model.
Yes. Last year I actually spoke about the Gen Z traveler, which is been interesting this past year. Is I think that we can all speak to the Gen Zer has been really leading and being probably the most confident traveler at this point. So my name's Laura Fernandez, and I head up travel and tourism for Pandora. We are owned by SiriusXM, and we also have the U.S. ad buying arm for SoundCloud, and we just acquired the podcast app Stitcher. We have our own research panel that we gain insights into our listeners, and they want to travel. Like 67% of the Pandora listener wants to travel. It all goes back to the same thing. They're traveling by car. They want the outdoor experiences. But what I think has been so special about Pandora and just streaming music as a whole is that it's truly been a safe spot. Not only does it uplift you, I mean, I will tell you after every Zoom meeting, I'm jamming out to some music. It's Ace of Base today. But through this whole pandemic, from a self-care standpoint, staying in your like positive headspace, because that's all what it's about right now, is how can I stay in the best headspace in this virtual world, in this crazy world we're in. And what I've seen from travel brands, especially from destination marketing organizations, is that they've been leaning on streaming audio as a way to reach consumers while they're in a good headspace. What I loved is that Costa Rica tourism came in, and this is March or April. They came in and they sponsored our relaxation station. Because while they can't come in and be like, oh my gosh, like come to Costa Rica right now, because at the beginning it was all about driving inspiration, keeping the dream alive. And what I loved about what Costa Rica did was that they came in and like, we knew that we were seeing an influx in listenership on our relaxation station, our calm station. And I'm positive you're seeing this across all streaming publishers, but they came in, let's have ownership of this. And so that's one trend that I've been seeing this year, is like really using music, whether it's sponsoring road trip stations or just targeting road trippers, because we know that's what consumers are doing. Going into next year, this is, you know, from a targeting a creative standpoint, I think a trend that we're going to see that happen this year, go into next year, is truly representing America's voice. And that includes representing people of color, not only of the experiences that they offer at the destinations, but also in the creative that they run, the targeting, and making sure they really understand this audience. And what I found so interesting throughout this whole experience is, from a travel perspective, especially destinations, they are realizing that there is no more of this one-size-fits-all mentality. And we need to include diversity and representation. So that's one of the trends outside of outdoor experiences and road trips that I truly think is not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, that's a really great insight. And I think we ought to dive into several of those points as we go forward and talk about the changing consumer, because some really good points. Steve, what about you on kind of the lessons learned and what you're seeing for the last quarter of 2020?
Yeah, I mean, it really, to echo a lot of what's been said, what hasn't changed is the positivity. I mean, 82% of travelers say they're excited for that trip. They're spending time doing it. They're trying to figure out how to do it safely, and they are making decisions based on how secure either that destination or the businesses within that destination are making them feel. And the thing that I sort of always keep counseling people on is that doesn't mean that your message has to be about safety. You know, safety doesn't inspire us to travel. It's something that we want to know we are going to experience, that there are practices in place that are going to keep us healthy and safe. But that's not like the core messaging piece that we need. One of the other, I think, exciting things that we've seen is around holiday travel. You know, we've seen about a 14% increase in people who say they will travel domestically this year versus last year. Not a huge surprise, and it equates to the roughly 13% of people who said they traveled internationally last year and they're not planning to this year. So, you know, we're seeing that shift in the holiday travel, but holiday travel is still there. I think it might have been Sean who talked a little bit about where they're going to head. You know, especially for the holidays, as we see in years past, they're still looking to visit family and friends, maybe reconnect with family and friends that they haven't seen throughout this sort of long ordeal of 2020. I think I posted something the other day that we're in the fifth year of 2020 at the moment, and that's, I think, how it feels for a lot of us. So, and I think the other real benefit and opportunity that continues into 2021 is just an openness with that increase in domestic travel for travelers to explore new places and consider places that they might not have considered prior to this pandemic, in part because of how they have to travel or the types of experiences they're seeking. But that creates just as much opportunity for sort of the tried and true destinations to think about their lesser known assets. New York City talking about Snug Harbor on Staten Island, or San Francisco really emphasizing their parks and outdoor venues and activities. So with each sort of door that closes, it's so cliche, but it is opening other doors. And I think your point, Laura, about thinking about the diversity in travel is really important, because in some ways it's the one thing that has impacted this year in a significant way that isn't COVID driven. And there's a lot to be sort of gleaned from that as well in terms of the opportunities that lie ahead.
Absolutely. And we'll pick up on that. I just want to, this session is going to fly by, and we're going to blink and it's going to be over, and we're going to wish we had another hour. But I want to make sure everybody that's online, any questions, this kind of a panel is a true treat for all of us. So any questions you have, please put in the Q&A, throw in the chat, and we'll make sure we get to them, because we're 30% through already, and we'll be done before we know it. So going back to Laura's comment, and I think it's really interesting. And most of the health and wellness conversations to date have been mask and social distance and keeping your hands washed and kind of following the rules, which was clearly an important step that travel needed to take, and we probably could have taken it a little bit earlier. But you bring up the whole health and wellness. I think, Steve, you bring up the whole kind of social good. I mean, those are some real critical points that have really impacted us as consumers. And I'd love to kind of, again, go back to, Laura, your sense of kind of these are kind of underlying emotions that are really going to drive consumer behavior, consumer actions in travel, certainly moving forward, and how you see that changing us as marketers and how we try to relate to consumers. It's not a one size fits all approach, as we heard, but how does that evolve? And kind of, we're talking to a different group of people that are in a different place than they were before. Not just COVID, it's just the world is a different place, and it's changed them.
I think this is where brands, especially destinations, need to lean on the research from the publishers or the brands that they're going to serve their marketing message in. Because my Pandora and SiriusXM or SoundCloud's our audience for Black travelers may engage differently than a Google or a Facebook. So really leaning in on the publishers, and then understanding, because even when you're talking about Black Americans, there's not one size fits all there. So really understanding and leaning on the research. I know that's so cliche to say lean on the research, but lean on the research of the brands and publishers that you're going to be investing your marketing dollars on, to really understand the trends and how that audience ticks. And then to obviously use then the publishers, or obviously you can work with your creative agency, but then use that to define and build the creative, because your creative needs to resonate with that audience. And that's where I think that it is so important to talk to the brands that you're working with.
Absolutely. Carly and Sean, I'd love to both of you kind of bounce in on this same changing consumer and the importance of kind of understanding the whole of that person versus just some of the traditional stats that we've used to measure and target people.
Sure. I'm happy to dive in here. I'm so thankful that Laura brought up this point. I think it's critical to the world currently and to business, the point around diversity and inclusion, and also the point of showcasing diversity in your creative. I think regardless of industry, we found that showcasing that in creative and representation is important. So as Laura said, I would make sure to talk to representatives about how to best approach that in your creative and in the platform that you're using. To that end, something that I have seen that's pretty important and innovative and could be done is that a lot of tourism boards promote local business. So why not promote minority-owned businesses and use your platform to effectively promote minority-owned businesses? Just to plug that thought. But for 2021, I think the redefinition of travel will be huge, specifically not just making sure diversity and inclusion is important in our businesses and also in our creative and marketing. but also thinking about environmentalism. How can we be more environmentally savvy and conscious? Additionally, safety in travel, I do think, is important. How can we travel safely? And thinking about that social good element in every practice that we do, I think will be important in 2021. So again, thanks, Laura, for bringing up that point.
Sean?
Yeah, I think of this in two areas as I've been talking to customers. One is understanding, and two is being helpful. Just to bring it back to basics, is that a lot of what we knew about seasonality and a lot of what we knew inherently about our destinations, it's not really useful anymore. And so historical data and seasonality I found is not very helpful. And folks have been looking to new sources to be in an information providing position for their stakeholders and for their communities. So there's three that we are recommending as a group, which is sentiment tracking, spending tracking, and mobility tracking. If you can find some resource or create some resource for your destination that thinks, as you're tracking recovery for my destination, just simply, this is how sentiment is around travel to our region or our city. Second, this is how consumer spending habits are looking. And then third, this is what mobility is looking like. Because we're not there yet. So I think to be helpful internally to your stakeholders, to your local businesses, to your governments, to the folks that you're working with, that's probably the three things I would point to. And then second, to be helpful, some of us have to travel. I needed to go home to see family this summer for something that came up, and I was real worried about it, like many of us are. And I got off the beaten path. There's a phrase we're using at Google, just even describe our own home lives, and maybe you can relate to it. We're all enduring the same storm. And believe me, it feels like if these were lettered around like the Greek letters now of the storms we're enduring, but we're all enduring the same storm, but we're all in different boats. So you could think about that. Some folks are in studios and some folks have 5-bedroom houses. Those are different boats for the same storm. Some people do not have kids and live alone. That's me. Others have big families, and that's challenging too. But for your destination, some of you are deprived of international travel and business travel and are really hurting. Others of you, I've heard over the years, have been saying, we're secondary or tertiary destinations. We really wish people would get off the beaten path and do more domestic and rural travel. And maybe you're experiencing a boon right now, and that could be good or it could be challenging. But I think going back to basics, as people are considering my location, as they have questions about my location, as I'm choosing to tell stories, you are content editors, and this point around whose stories do we tell? Are they just the most obvious stories in the destination, or are there untold stories from voices who have been disadvantaged and excluded due to historic racism? Going back to basics around how can I be helpful, man, driving across the country this year for me, it sucked. Just data I was looking for around where can I camp because I don't want to stay in a hotel personally, or what hikes are available that aren't just the national parks. Are there some cute downtowns that I could kind of walk around and see as I was driving through some of those states? Man, I was so disappointed, not by anybody in particular, but just the web's ability to answer my questions. And so while you're in this retooling stage of planning for the future of your destination, being helpful now and being helpful in the future, I think even just having a brainstorm of your small and overworked office of what questions are we getting, what stories do we want to tell, how can we be helpful right now, and what do we want to be in the future. And while I won't go through all of it, I guess before we end this session, I want to share that about 2 months ago, Google published a 21-page report called Actions That Destination Marketers Can Take During COVID-19. And for those that haven't seen that PDF, it's in partnership with BCG. Yes, Kathy, hooray for rural tourism. Agreed. We love rural tourism, and hopefully they're getting a moment that is both COVID safe and helping people's mental health. But 5 R's to recovery, reassess your offerings, reassure travelers of safety, raise awareness of the destination, remove barriers by encouraging healthy behaviors, and then focus on reviving the local economy. And so I won't go into the details of all of them because we don't have time, but I will make sure that Will and Becca and the team have that PDF and can distribute to all of you for free. It's really useful.
That's awesome. Thanks, Sean. Thank you. That's an amazing resource for everybody that's on here. So if you would share that with us, we'll be sure to get it out. And thanks for bringing up that message. I know coming out of CES, I think it was this year maybe, or maybe it was last year, but the Google phrase was the most helpful marketing ecosystem is going to win. And you raise a lot of questions. It's not just about, what's open, what's closed. We're very accustomed to being inspirational and not necessarily, as informational and helpful. And that was right. We can't blame anybody because it was working, right? 10 years, everybody winning. Now it's a reset. And I think it's a really great advice. And Steve, I can't go from, be helpful and not go straight to TripAdvisor, who that's your business.
Well, hopefully that's something we're always working to try to make sure we're doing effectively, but in changing times, it requires evolving approaches. One of the things that I think is interesting about this time, and I hate to use the word pause, but there has been a bit of a pause for some destinations. And I can remember last year, we were all very focused on, what I call excess demand. I'm not really a big fan of the other term that gets used. And excess demand has been the least of our worries as destinations. And yet this year, and this sort of builds off a little bit of what Sean was saying, has provided an opportunity for us as destination managers to rethink some of the challenges that our destination has faced in the past, to plan for the eventual full recovery of travel and tourism, which we're clearly not in the full recovery mode for most destinations, although we certainly have seen destinations over the course of this summer that had better summers than they've ever had before, because people are venturing off to the beaten path, and so it creates this incredible opportunity to rally the community around some of these challenges and prepare for what comes next. In terms of sustainability, in terms of managing excess demand. The other thing, to Laura's point, as we think about diversity and inclusion, I think one of the things that's really important for all of us to consider is that showing that diversity is not something we do just when we're talking to those underrepresented audiences. It really is something that needs to permeate everything we do. And I think we also have to be cautious as marketers. As marketers, we'd like to put things in nice, neat buckets, right? So that we're going to target this here, that there. But we don't all fit into nice, neat buckets, right? I can be a 60-something kayaker or a 20-something kayaker, and I can be Black, Caucasian, Asian, and interested in those things. So, while we want to understand our traveler as much as possible, to Sean's point about sentiment, we want to make sure that we don't end up over compartmentalizing our visitors and sort of defining them in ways that they might not define themselves. And that's a challenge, but again, through the insights that we have, both, destinations sit on a ton of data, and more destinations are becoming good at how they leverage their own data from their own website visitors, the information and relationships that they're building with travelers. And this, again, is a great time to be looking at, how do I take what I know about travelers and use that to my advantage?
And that's I think it's really worth talking through this kind of continuing the conversation about just target market identification moving forward, because again, a traditional marketing plan is pretty general. We've gotten a lot better. We've got some amazing partners in the industry that are helping us identify and deliver, much more customizable messages to people. But, the whole idea before and of lookalikes, and you could have somebody that, is the perfect lookalike and has the exact opposite opinion on COVID. And it's thrown another wrench in the plans. So it's all, again, we have to develop those systems to make sure that we're not pushing travel to somebody that's not comfortable yet. And we're encouraging those people along the pipeline. It's been fascinating here, again, with the first time I've been together with 1,000 people, and in the varying levels of comfort, and is it one mask or double masks, and all that. And we have to understand that our travelers are feeling different, and how we motivate them is going to really be dependent on. We have to be careful. We can, some messages, on social media will push somebody off the wrong way. So I know, Laura, you have some thoughts on kind of messaging to a really changed consumer.
One, obviously, I think we know the initial trends of the creative was like drive inspiration, create hope, we're here when you're ready. And now it's shifted to we're open, safety and cleaning procedures, to outdoor experiences. But one thing that we're not seeing a whole lot of, which it's interesting because now this is being planned into next year, are testimonials. Because why I am such an advocate of influencer marketing, and then from obviously going on different publishers, whether it's streaming audio, streaming video, but sharing those testimonials, because right now people, I always go back to the headspace. People are in a weird headspace. So they not only, yes, it's great to hear from Ed Bastian, from the CEO of Delta Airlines. That's great. I think he's an incredible, not only public speaker, but how he addresses the overall travel community. But people want to hear from their friends. And so how can we bring that to life via our advertising campaigns? And I haven't seen a whole lot of it. But I did this panel with travel influencers across all life stages. So I'm talking boomers, Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y. And one theme that was consistent was, yes, we do want to hear about the safety and cleaning procedures because we want to make sure we're comfy. But the second thing is we want to hear from our friends. So which makes me then lead into, we got to bring back testimonials.
Yeah, that's really interesting when you say that the price of entry is now safe and healthy, but we're in a trust-free environment right now. Unfortunately, the lack of confidence in every one of our institutions is at nearly an all-time low. So bringing back that the vice of friends and family and influencers makes a ton of sense. Carly?
Yeah, no, I just want to double click on that point. I think it's definitely something that we're seeing at Facebook and on our Facebook family of apps of Instagram and Messenger and Audience Network, the importance of influencers. As Laura said, it's one thing to have messaging come from a CMO or a CEO about reemergence or about the policies that you have, but it's another thing to have let's say like an Instagram unit or an Instagram photo from a traveler and a person who's visited your destination, showcasing why they would return and having that connection through on Facebook. I know we have the branded content tool, but I know that there's other versions of this that Lauren and Sean have. So I do think influencer marketing is incredibly important, and having the communication be genuine from the people who care about your destinations the most. To piggyback on another trend that I think is important, I believe Sean was mentioning it earlier about having like communications directly with consumers. We are finding, especially in the holidays, that boomers and Gen X want to be communicated with directly, especially boomers. They're craving personal messaging with consumer brands, e-commerce, retail, but also with travel brands. So the rise in personal messaging, of having a direct message with somebody to be able to help them through the booking process, help answer their questions. And in the tourism landscape, like for instance, Messenger can be used to showcase different offerings of the destination, different opportunities or restaurants, but it's a personal experience and one-on-one. I think in addition to the influencer piece, having one-on-one messaging is a really unique way to help people feel comfortable about traveling again. And then the last piece I'd add from a sentiment perspective is I think the best thing we can do as marketers is measure. I think that there could be some intimidation about conducting a measurement study or really asking your audiences, what is your sentiment about our destination? But that's the only way we can learn. So I would encourage you all to think about measuring the impact of your current campaigns and trying to measure as much as possible to influence strategy moving into 2021.
May I? I want to piggyback on Carly's point because I'm a little different than you, Sean, because I had an incredible road trip experience. And thanks to, obviously I'm in the industry. I know that you can message on Facebook or Instagram the destination. So I'm messaging Wyoming, Montana, and Colorado, and asking them like, hey, do you have this cool hot spot in Cody, Wyoming? And they're quick to respond, like, you got to go to this restaurant. So I had to incredible road trip experience thanks to messaging the actual DMO on their social channels throughout our whole road trip experience. I wanted to put that out there because I think they've done such a good job on getting back to people on social media right now.
No, that's awesome, and it's those social media managers right now have a much harder job than they ever have managing through all the different issues that we've talked about. And we had a really good panel talking to many of them earlier on in eTourism Summit. We also had a keynote early, Brian Solis, and he brought up this whole idea that he talked about breaking up the world into BC, before coronavirus, and AD after this disruption, and said, this is clearly a massive disruption, but it's also accelerating a lot of trends that we were starting to see. And I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that. I mean, who would have thought that, some guy skateboarding down a road is going to, dog face is going to end up, in TV ads within a week. I mean, it's fascinating. And in tourism ads within, 2 weeks, it's pretty incredible. But we've seen a lot of disruption clearly, but it's really accelerated a lot of trends. Sean, I'd love to start with you and kind of what you're seeing into 2021. Of what trends are you going to see really pick up and be critical for us moving forward?
Yeah. So I guess I'll say three and then just kind of touch on each of them. And some of them might be a little bit buzzy, but follow me. The first is memes. The second is machine learning. And the third is ad relevance. All, phrases we've used for a while. The first, memes, we're all living very relatable lives by ourselves. And so the moment in which you see a piece of content and you think, I'm living alone or in this bubble, but it seems we're all living the same life. Dog face riding down a hill with a bottle of ocean spray is speaking to my soul right now, and I want to engage with that. I mean, everyone can say it. I think we've had all of these, and we're all consuming videos trying to feel humanity. There are people all around us that love us, even though we can't be with everyone and, spend time with them. So memes. I think being aware of we're all like having a single conversation at the same time too. Of course, this is happening on our platforms, but I'll go off platform. I have loved TikTok this year. There have been such relatable memes, including that one that came from TikTok. And I've seen some really good inspirational tourism too, that is just vertical video panning, whether that's on YouTube or on Facebook or on TikTok. Vertical video panning showing the top 10 hikes in my state with inspirational music, just showing raw product. I've looked at that and thought, I want to go to there. And maybe with some more ideas, I'd be willing to do some weekend drives instead of being home, doing my normal routine. That's the first one. The second one, machine learning. We've talked a lot about machine learning for the last decade. I'll just go back to basics. Machine learning disregards strong old historicals and adapts in real time to volatility. That's the definition of this pandemic, is that in the months that followed the shutdown and since, we have seen an enormous adoption in automated solutions because you've said what I thought I knew about my audience or where I thought they were or what age I thought they were, and you see if you can do better. And I would say, regardless of which platform you're on, ours or others, I would take a second look at their automated solutions because they may do a better job. And then the third one, relevance. If we go off of insights like a third of the country is going to be doing intercity short-term drives, well, what does that mean for relevance for your ads? The one I just mentioned, maybe it's focusing on the nearby cities that aren't traditionally the only feeders for your destination, but in the absence of a lot of air travel, maybe they are even more now. And I'd remind you that all these platforms have really targeted geo-targeting, and you probably have a limited budget. Our stats show that 90% of travel companies reduced ad spending this year and need to conserve cash for various reasons. And so if there's more scrutiny on your budget, if you're trying to be more smarter and tell a strong story about why you need to spend cash right now, well, then showing how you're being even more targeted and directly contributing to an economic recovery, I think is going to make you look good, and it's going to truly help your community and your destination.
No, I love that. That's so true. Steve, what do you think about accelerating trends moving forward?
Yeah, I think the big one that we've seen, and I think it's only going to continue, is more nimbleness on the part of DMOs. The long range plan, even 12-month plan that used to be, we see destinations much more comfortable with short term planning, pausing, adjusting, and making those decisions based on insights that they're tracking in real time throughout that program. I think that's an evolution that's been accelerated and is going to continue to be important for the foreseeable future. The other thing I think is, we've certainly seen a big shift in focus at this point, and it'll be interesting to see how long this lasts, but away from sort of a more mass type of approach to really focusing in on travel intenders, travelers that are showing signals of intent to go somewhere. And there's some destinations that have focused on people who've already traveled. I'm not necessarily sure that's the best approach, because the challenge there is that doesn't mean that they're going to travel again. It might be like Sean, who had a family issue that he had to go back for, and that sort of spurred the travel that he did. So it's really the people who right at this moment are showing those intent signals, and that takes shape in the form of those contracted booking windows that you mentioned, Will. People are reticent to make long-term plans. They're planning for this weekend or next weekend, maybe 2 or 3 weeks out, and that changes the dynamic. And so we're seeing a lot of destinations sort of react to that. I thought Sean's point about machine learning is a really important one, because as marketers, it can be a little anxiety producing to sort of turn over some of that control to machines. But what we see time and time again is that machine learning is delivering better results, better audience targeting. So I think that we're seeing a growing comfort level with that, and I think that's again another area that's going to continue to accelerate.
Right, and it's deliver. You can deliver it, you can measure it. It's delivering results, and we're giving up a little bit, but I think destinations are gaining a lot by doing that, and not only in ROI, but also in the insights that are going to come from it moving forward. Carly, would you like to piggyback on your thoughts for kind of those areas that are going to really accelerate in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, all of those are really great points, and I was vigorously nodding my head because I would agree with a lot of them. To Steve's point, I think the overarching headline I will say before I dive into potential, drivers or disruptors is that I think being flexible and nimble will be the name of the game in 2021 and continue to be really important as geographic reemergence continues to ebb and flow. So continuing to be flexible as possible, I think, is really key. In terms of trends that I would flag for 2021, I similarly to Sean have some buzzwords for you. The first being social good, the second actually being machine learning, and the third being mobile first creative. So for the social good piece, I think we are at a reckoning moment, a redefinition in travel, and I think there's an opportunity to redefine the industry in terms of having diversity, having environmentally conscious practices, safety up front, really kind of having those policies being ingrained. And along those lines, 60% of people do want to hear what brands stand for right now. So really communicating what you stand for as a business and as a destination, I think, is important. And what I will plug there is that although the holiday season isn't necessarily traditionally for tourism and the tourism industry, those big Black Friday, Cyber Monday moments, think about Giving Tuesday. Think about Small Business Saturday. Could you showcase organically or through paid kind of the charitable relationships you have is just one category I would flagged. The second piece is mobile first creative. This was big before 2020, 2021, and I do think it's how some of the leading tourism brands and industry leaders are kind of redefining their creative is by reducing the amount of time their content is taking, by making it dimensions that can consume a smartphone or Android, so 9:16, 4:5, cutting it to be 15 seconds or less, or communicating the message more succinctly. I think is at least key for Facebook. But overall, you guys are in such a beautiful position because you have great creative, great video assets that are already inspiring. So can we just communicate it more succinctly and make it engaging on a smartphone where people are potentially spending time right now communicating with loved ones? And then the third piece would be machine learning. Sean said it, and I'll reiterate it, that machine learning is critical, regardless of industry, especially in travel, really leaning into letting the system and AI find the traveler for you. Will take some of the work off your plate, and also will make your ads and marketing better and more tailored. So those would be the three things I would flag, and hopefully they were reiterating Sean's and Steve's points.
Well, I think so. And, the one about nimble, I think right now we're nimble by because we have to be, right? The DMOs are they're forced into being nimble and making really quick decisions. In conversations we've had, people are saying, I'm planning, 6 weeks is 6 weeks or 4 weeks, is that fair? Justin in Denver's out to 2 months and kind of really stretching the curve on planning. But I think something that's really, really important is that the nimbleness gets some structural, kind of becomes more structural for destination marketers, and that the structure for years since I was in the business, is your annual marketing plan, and it's as vendor suppliers getting in on the annual budget and getting in on that annual media buy. And if we can not make this just out of necessity for the crisis, but turn it into a nimble organizations, I think those organizations will be much, much, much more successful. So this is a great time to kind of reimagine how a destination marketing organization can plan, execute, and measure campaigns or initiatives. So again, I think that goes to a higher, that's to talking to the CMOs and more likely talking to the CEOs and the boards to get into a different way. And the only one that I'm going to add that I didn't really hear that I think is something that is going to be accelerated is the destination marketing organization's role within the community and the ability to start really focus on creating connectivity within those within the communities, building bonds and relationships that otherwise there was never really a reason for a brew pub to work with the art gallery, other than maybe going in and providing beer for showing. I think and have done a really good job through COVID. But if they embrace that, that's going to be a real difference maker, I think, long term going forward. And a role that DMOs, other than just selling memberships or providing membership value, but being the connector and not necessarily creating everything. Carly and Laura both talked about content. We don't necessarily trust marketers' content, but we trust small business. If you look at the Gallup poll, the single highest of institutions that goes out every year, the single highest category of Americans' trust in institutions is our trust in small businesses. So the extent to the ability, we have the ability to gather those small business voices within our communities to have them tell our stories. And we've had a couple conversations about that this morning as well. So those are just kind of a couple of tag-alongs on the acceleration. We're down to like our last 8-10 minutes, and I've got some of the biggest technology companies in the world represented here, and it kind of would, outside of maybe even tourism, I'm seeing explosion of tools and resources that are really providing different connectivity than we've had before. Sean, you mentioned the TikTok. There's stories everywhere, and these small snippets are different, and I'm seeing just a really robust marketplace in technology, and I'd love to kind of get your predictions on how this is going to evolve in the next year and what kind of we can look to see. Laura, would you like to go first?
I mean, streaming, audio and video, they're having a pretty big year. They're just reaching different consumers. I mean, you're with audio, especially music and podcasts, you're typically reaching someone that's doing something, whether you're cooking, you're working out, or just trying to get in a good headspace. I say that way too much, but video, it's just a different consumer because you're, whether you're spending 10 hours on the couch just binge watching Netflix, but streaming is having a year. Again, whether it's video or audio. One thing that's been really interesting is that this growth is obviously coming from people creating on-demand content, also connected devices, and just the convenience factor. But while we've seen, and I can speak from the audio perspective, is that in the past couple of years, we've seen this growth via Amazon Alexa or Google Home, so the smart speakers. And we've seen that spike even more. Obviously, people are spending around 3 to 4 hours a day, upwards to 7 with audio at home. But another platform that we're seeing massive growth is actually your desktop and laptop computer. And it was interesting because Pandora were on all these devices, our mobile desktop, tablet, in-car, and then smart connected home devices. Desktop and laptop prior to the pandemic was at the bottom. And now it's one of our fastest growing platforms along with connected devices. So I don't see streaming, whether it's audio or video, going anywhere anytime soon.
That's awesome. Carly?
Yeah, I think I would reiterate the time that people are spending with streaming, and then also to that point, watching content. So across all of the different channels, I think there's a lot of video that's being produced. I will say Facebook Watch has a kind of an immense opportunity as well there in terms of having ad breaks, but just being in contact with people while they're watching personalized content for them. The other kind of disruptive product that I mentioned previously is Messenger. One-on-one messaging, I think, is really big, and potentially seeing it more so in travel. A lot of airlines and hotels have been leveraging it for a long time to make the user experience as seamless as possible. And I think that it's an opportunity for tourism to start to make, I think, the travel experience tailored to that person through chatbots and through automation. So those would be two disruptive products that I would flag in the Facebook side of our business.
Awesome. Sean, what about you and Google?
Yeah, I agree with both what Laura and Carly said on trends, so I won't add to that. I think I'll pivot a little bit to how we work. Traditionally, an element of e-tourism is we have brought many attendees in San Francisco down to our offices and invited you all to see how large tech companies are building productive, collaborative spaces that inspire employees and produce innovation. And boy, how that's changed. I'll share a little bit of work from home research that we just recently did. We asked a bunch of employees, when all this is done, what should we do? And only 8% of employees said that they want a work environment where they go to the Google office every single day, which is what we had. We're an office-focused culture where the free food and the massages and bringing your dog to work and the bicycles and the fitness centers and the dance classes, it's all intended to create an environment where you're happy and healthy and where you can collaborate and innovate and the creative spark that comes there. Only 8% of Googlers, despite all those perks, say, I want to go every day. 62% said some days, just some days. And then 15 said ad hoc, just tentpole events, and only 10% said, I want to work exclusively from home. We can't look away from that data, even for one of the best workplaces. Our CEO has said that we're going to return to a hybrid model where we're not in the office every day and we're not commuting to the office every single day. If necessity is the mother of innovation, or collaboration tools, all collaboration tools are still subpar. Everyone's, which is why we're getting video call burnout, and you feel that in your soul at 5 p.m. They will get better, and they probably won't totally fill the gap. We do believe at Google that we will still go to the office and we will still interact, but it won't be what it looked like before. And we're figuring out the details of what that looks like. If I were to be prescriptive about it, in order to compete for talent and in order to provide a good workplace, at some point you may think about that too as leaders, of what does a hybrid environment look like. It may not look like every day at the office, how it was in February and before.
Yeah, and what will an event look like? It will be the same thing, right? It's some element of in-person and virtual and something that we haven't even come up with the ideas just yet. So I think that innovation is obviously something that's going to be very, very important. Steve, your thoughts on acceleration?
Yeah, it's interesting. With this group, I feel a little bit like the little engine that could. TripAdvisor with our couple thousand employees compared to the tens of thousands that each of these companies have. But it's been an incredibly sort of productive and innovative year, and it for us, and it's been on businesses, making it easier to be a business in this environment. From things like the launch of our Travel Safe initiative to our new Spotlight offering that allows a business to manage their listings across a variety of platforms, TripAdvisor, Google, Yelp, et cetera, that are making it easier for businesses, that many of which have suffered workforce reductions, to manage their businesses. On the consumer side, our first new app in years, which is Reco, and it connects travelers with both travel advisors and influencers to plan their trips, something that we saw in research late last year, pre-COVID. So those are the kinds of things I think that get me excited about the where we're headed, both as an industry and also at TripAdvisor.
Well, I shared that when we started this, that an hour will go amazingly fast, and this could have easily gone 2 hours. I really want to thank you guys again for taking the time to spend with the eTourism Summit audience and sharing your insight. It's timely that, as Becca pointed out in the chat, that all of you guys talking about machine learning, that's the topic for our conversation tomorrow, kind of trying to make it a little bit more digestible moving forward. So that'll be that's a great opportunity. I encourage everybody to join us there. Steve and the team at TripAdvisor, thank you so much for stepping up to sponsor this. Carly, Sean, Laura, thank you so much for being a part of this. It's been an awesome hour, and I'm going to put this panel back together live and in person somewhere next year. All right?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.